Hello, everybody. Good to see you today. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about arranging and the importance of music theory in arranging. Now, I realize people who write all have a good, solid, basic knowledge of music theory, but one of the things I want to focus on right now is dominant function. Dominant function creates the strongest pull and the strongest attachment to a particular key center, and thus the potential for more and more interest on the part of the arranger and on the part of the listener if you have a good, solid knowledge of the use of dominant function, chords that function as a dominant or secondary dominant. Let's talk about a few things. Now we're going to start with something that everybody knows, just regular, normal, garden variety, dominant seventh chords. But we're going to get into some stuff that's a little more interesting and talk about some ideas in terms of how you can utilize this in your own charts. Okay, let's get started right here. First example we have is simply the dominant seventh chord. Everybody is familiar with what that sounds like. It can be voiced in any number of ways. You start in the bass with the root of the chord, and then the third, the fifth, and the seventh follow. We all know this. There's your dominant seventh, here's another position. So, pretty straightforward. Typically resolves to the tonic chord, or it can resolve elsewhere depending on what you're looking for, or whatever. A lot of different possibilities. So, anyway, that's the dominant seventh. Now, the next level up is the dominant ninth. Let's take a look at that. It's the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. There's your G9, G dominant ninth chord. Now, they can be voiced differently. The dominant ninth very often has the ninth in the top voice, very frequently, or you can have the fifth in the top voice also. So a lot of different possibilities there, and of course it resolves similarly to tonic. Now things get a little bit more interesting. And in order to make things more interesting, what we use are chord substitutions and chord extensions. Let's take a look at one version here. The next level up after the seventh and ninth is, of course, the dominant 11th. Now, interestingly, this chord is sometimes dealt with in different ways, and I'd like to talk about that right now. If we look at the dominant 11th, the way you write it in a G chord, for example, would be a G11. All right, pretty straightforward. Now, the way, if we build this chord, let's take a look. We've got the G in the bass, and you have to leave out the third, omit the third. Why? Obviously, G up to B, that's the third, but we need to omit it because the 11th is the same as the fourth. And the third and the fourth would have a terrible clash, completely negates all of the function right there and the interest of the dominant 11th. So the way you would typically voice something like this, take a look at the chart here, would be 1, 7, 9, 11. So let's try that. 1, and here's our 7th, here's our 9th, and here's the 11th. It's used a lot in a context like that to create a little excitement towards a modulation. It's used in jazz, it's used in pop music, it's used a lot of different ways. So if you look at it closely, what you're seeing here, G, F, A, C, or in other words, 1, 7, 9, 11. This is sometimes called a fractionated chord because notice in the upper voices, in my right hand, F, A, C, that's an F triad. But the dominant function, the dominant of the key, is in the left hand. So you've got G with an F chord on top. And again, our fractionated version of that is F over G. You can write it that way, or you can write simply G11. Once again, if I throw in the B, the third, it will sound really terrible. You can hear right there. Let's try it like this. A sound that goes nowhere, that makes no sense musically or functionally. There it is. So that's a good starting point for now, the G11. It can be voiced a lot of different ways, and it's up to you, the arranger, to decide which is the most effective, which makes the most sense on a particular chart at any given time. Now, another way to voice the dominant 11th, instead of using simply the F chord over G, like we did before, you can use a close cousin to the F chord, which would be the D minor 7th. So you can see, and there's a lot of ways to voice that. You can see here that that's the case. Another thing, just to make it even a little bit more interesting, would be an F major 7th. A lot of different options. And it's an interesting chord that has a lot of use, a lot of excitement in an arrangement. And that's a good stopping point for today. Next lesson that we have will be some of the chord extensions and substitutions that go beyond that, and some of the chord alterations.